Imagine it's 2012. You walk into a Goldman Sachs boardroom and say, "Gentlemen, in 15 years, the largest asset manager on planet Earth will be telling retirees to put part of their life savings into internet money." They would have laughed you out of the building. Nobody's laughing anymore. What we are witnessing right now isn't a bull run. It's not hype. It's not a meme. It is a fundamental, structural, irreversible shift in how the world thinks about money, and if you're not paying attention, you are going to look back at this moment the same way people looked back at missing the early internet. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Because the headlines are chaotic and most people are getting distracted by the noise when the real story is buried underneath it. Here's something nobody is saying clearly enough: when the biggest names in traditional finance start dedicating resources, airtime, and educational content to cryptocurrency, that's not marketing. That's a signal. That is a smoke alarm going off, telling you that something is fundamentally changing inside these institutions. Think about what it takes for a firm managing trillions of dollars to produce a public video teaching everyday investors how to allocate Bitcoin into a portfolio. That content doesn't get approved by one person. It goes through legal. It goes through compliance. It goes through risk committees. It goes through senior leadership. That means somewhere at the very top of these organizations, a decision was made. Crypto is no longer a liability to be avoided. It is a product to be offered. And here's what's wild: we're not just talking about one firm. We're talking about a cascading effect. When one giant moves, the others are forced to respond or risk losing clients who want exposure. It becomes competitive, and competition, my friends, is what drives adoption faster than any tweet ever could. The question isn't whether these institutions believe in crypto anymore. The question is, how fast are they moving? And the honest answer is faster than they're letting on publicly. Now let's address the elephant in the room, because I think people fundamentally misunderstand what regulation actually means for crypto. For years, the word regulation was treated like a villain in this space. People assumed that rules would kill the innovation, strangle the decentralization, and hand control back to the same bankers that crypto was built to challenge. But here's the reframe that I think changes everything. Regulation doesn't shrink the market. Regulation expands the market because it opens the door to every investor, institution, pension fund, and sovereign wealth fund that was legally prohibited from touching crypto before. Think about it this way: there's a massive shopping mall being built. Right now, only a fraction of the stores are open. Some people are sneaking in through the back. Others are too nervous to enter at all because there are no clear signs, no security, no rules. The whole thing feels unstable. Now imagine they finish construction, they add lighting, they put up signs, they post security. Suddenly, everyone feels safe walking in. The foot traffic explodes. That's what regulatory clarity does for crypto. It doesn't cage the market. It civilizes it enough that the people who were waiting on the sidelines, and there are tens of trillions of dollars sitting on those sidelines, finally feel safe walking through the door. What we're seeing right now, with frameworks being built around stablecoins, tokenized securities, and the distinction between digital commodities and digital equities, that's the mall finishing construction. And the grand opening is closer than most people realize. Okay, let's talk about something that has the entire crypto community holding its breath. The idea of a national digital asset reserve, specifically one that could include assets beyond just Bitcoin, is one of the most consequential policy conversations happening in Washington right now. And I'll be honest with you, I think people are sleeping on how significant this actually is. Here's why it matters on a level most people aren't discussing. When a government officially designates an asset as a strategic reserve, it does something psychologically and economically profound. It legitimizes that asset at the highest possible level of trust. It's essentially the state saying, "This has value, we are holding it, you can trust it." Gold became the bedrock of global finance. Partly because governments decided to hold it. Not because it had obvious utility, not because everyone agreed it was useful, but because the stamp of sovereign backing created a self-reinforcing cycle of trust. Now imagine that logic applied to digital assets. Even a partial, symbolic reserve sends a message to every other nation, every central bank, every institutional investor watching. America is treating this as a serious store of value. The downstream effects of that signal alone could reshape global capital flows in ways that make the last bull run look like a warm-up lap. And here's where I'll keep it real with you: announcements without timelines are not policy. Enthusiasm without execution is not progress. If you're watching the political space and expecting everything to happen overnight, you're going to frustrate yourself. These things move slowly, and sometimes the people in charge are figuring it out as they go, just like the rest of us. Stay informed, stay patient, but don't mistake momentum for arrival. Now here's the part of this conversation that I genuinely think is the most underappreciated story in all of crypto right now. We spend a lot of time talking about human investors, retail, institutional, sovereign, but what about non-human participants in the economy? Artificial intelligence is moving from being a tool that humans use to being an agent that operates independently, AI systems are already being designed to negotiate, purchase, transact, and allocate resources autonomously. And here's the critical question. What currency does an AI agent use? It can't open a bank account, it can't sign a contract, it can't walk into a branch. But it can hold a crypto wallet. It can execute smart contracts, it can transact on a blockchain with zero friction and zero need for human intermediaries. This isn't science fiction, the infrastructure for this already exists. And as AI agents proliferate across industries, logistics, finance, healthcare, e-commerce, the demand for programmable, borderless, machine-native currency is going to grow in ways that are genuinely hard to calculate right now. The specific assets that become the language of machine-to-machine commerce, those are the ones that aren't just going to have human adoption. They're going to have algorithmic adoption, and algorithmic adoption scales at a speed and volume that no human market has ever matched. If you think about which assets are already optimized for speed, programmability, and interoperability, that shortlist is not very long. And that, to me, is one of the most compelling long-term arguments I've come across in this entire space. Let me paint you a picture of where this all ends up. It's 5 years from now. You tap your phone to pay for groceries. The transaction settles in under a second. You don't think about it. You tap to buy stock in a company you believe in. It's in your portfolio instantly, no T to settlement, no middleman taking a cut, no paperwork. You receive a wire from someone overseas and it arrives in seconds, not days. None of this feels like crypto. None of it feels like blockchain. It just feels like life. Fast, efficient, seamless. But underneath every single one of those transactions is a tokenized system running on digital infrastructure that didn't exist a decade ago. The greatest sign of technology's success isn't when people talk about it. It's when people stop talking about it because they don't need to. Nobody sits around at dinner discussing the TCP or IP protocol that makes their internet work. They just stream movies and scroll feeds. That's where crypto is headed, not to a world where everyone is checking charts and debating tokenomics, but to a world where the rails of the global economy have quietly been rebuilt and the people riding on them don't even know it happened. So here's what I want to leave you with. The noise is going to continue. Prices will swing, politicians will hedge, institutions will move slower than we want. There will be weeks where everything feels stalled and weeks where everything feels like it's exploding, but zoom out. Look at the trajectory, not the turbulence. A year ago you couldn't have this conversation on mainstream financial television without a smirk. Now the smirk is gone, the suits are at the table, the legislation is being drafted, the reserves are being debated. The AI future is being built. The window where ordinary people can position themselves ahead of this transformation, that window is not permanently open. Where is this market going? I think the better question is, where isn't it going? Because if you genuinely believe that the world is moving toward digital, programmable, borderless value transfer, then the only question left is how much of that future you want to own. I'll see you on the other side of it. Drop a comment. What's the one asset you're most convicted on heading into the next 5 years? Let's talk about it below.